The dynamic of the type of people who are in the room. When I look around, we have community members, we have people from the city, we have people who are in school, and designers and planners, and of all walks of life, of all backgrounds, and all ages, and it's really exciting to see. So thank you for coming tonight. Speaking of 10, LivableStreets is going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary next year, in 2015. Exciting. So stay tuned and stay involved and look out for more announcements about exciting things happening in 2015. And backed by popular demand, we'll have more events like these.
To ensure that 15 years in the future, the city has supported significant improvements in equity, providing everyone in the city with access to opportunities to be healthy, enriched, educated, and employed. In climate, limiting the city's contribution to greenhouse gas emissions and preparing the city for the impacts of sea level rise and other climate change effects. And finally, economy. We want to ensure that the city remains a vibrant job center, a leader in innovation as new sectors emerge, and a place where businesses locate confidently, knowing they'll be well connected to Boston's dynamic workforce.
Thank you, Jackie. It's exciting to be here. You heard about Boston's plan, Go Boston 2030. And so at the end of September, the mayor sent Chris, Rick Domino from A Better City, and the chief of civic engineering from the Boston Public Works Department, William Doligan, thank you, to Amsterdam to go learn about their lighting system. And what you see behind me is Chris and I cycling on a rainy day, and Chris photobombing while I was trying to record the trip.
I know John's face is so serious in that photo too. So I'm going to walk us through a little bit about where we went, some of the infrastructure. We traveled to Utrecht, which is mostly a university town. It's also a central transportation hub in the Netherlands. We went then to Zwolle, which is a smaller town, about 125,000 people, recognized in 2014 as the Dutch Cycling City of the Year. Then we went to Rotterdam, which maps maybe closer to what Boston is, a city that was sort of obliterated towards the end of World War II, and then regrew as sort of an American-looking city, right? So bigger streets, bigger buildings. And then lastly, Amsterdam, where they legalized pot and put everybody on bikes. So we're going to talk about three things. First, I'm going to talk about infrastructure. John's going to talk about economics a little bit, and then we'll both sort of touch on cycling culture and what it means to have a strong cycling culture. So the first thing to notice is the street color, right? So all the streets that are made and designed for bicycles are red. This is sort of a shock, I think, for all of us. You know, I travel a little bit in Europe, but hadn't really paid attention to this before. But the more important thing that I actually like in this photo is the sign that shows the bicycle in the car, which essentially translates to the car is a guest. So I picture this as being downtown crossing, essentially, right? The car is sort of a guest in that space, except this is the entire city. So some of the stuff that we saw was sort of these old streets, you know, with these closed off sort of pedestrian and cycling downtown areas that allow you to ride side by side. We saw streets where the car sort of has one lane and bikes have two, and they sort of navigate around each other. Neighborhood streets that were the cars sort of sort of secondary and moving through at very slow speeds. These sort of neighborhood welcome mats that we call them, the raised crossings, and then sort of your more traditional protected lanes, both one-way and two-way protected cycle tracks. This is something that I found fascinating, not just that there's all yours. This is great because I have videos that I didn't put a soundtrack to them, so this is perfect. So I love this intersection because you have 4 trains, hundreds of cyclists, hundreds of pedestrians, over 150 cars. This is 10 minutes. My wife doesn't let me do this when we travel, but I just do it for 10 minutes. There's no traffic signal at this intersection, right? So what does that say about the culture? I know the Parks Commissioner isn't here tonight, but they actually use the parks as a transportation system in this country instead of I love because there's people that were actually getting off tuxedos on bikes and going into a gala. This is a very famous building where they integrate bikes into the architecture, right? So how can we sort of play with that in our emerging districts? And then what does that all lead to? It leads to a more vibrant street scene, right? So this is where you can enjoy your coffee, but there's transit, there's bikes, there's all of the above. I know this is going to be incredibly depressing because we don't have this, so I wanted to leave you with this thought. They have not solved parking and bike lanes yet. And so we still have hope that we can be the people to solve that issue. And with that, take it away.
You know, start your destination all the way to downtown, not just a system that delivers you to the train. Left turns prohibited, helps move things along more quickly, really high quality stations, real-time passenger info. All right, multi-vehicles with really wide doors, and many of them, allowing people to get on and off quickly. Bicycle parking at stations, really integrating the network, as well as including bicycle lanes whenever possible. And center stations that are shared both directions. That means less infrastructure. Instead of having a station on either side of the street, you have a single piece of infrastructure, which keeps the cost down, but also allows for greater efficiency. So, is gold standard BRT possible in Greater Boston? After a year of looking at this, the BRT study group, which I'm happy to talk about later, but I only have 30 minutes, Jackie. Thanks. Has identified 5 corridors. Those corridors are Dudley Square to Haymarket, Dudley Square to Harvard, Reedville to Forest Hills, Mattapan Square to Dudley Square, and Sullivan Square to Longwood. It's starting to look like a network there. I'm going to pass that one along because they're
had a little service, but one of the things here is that we created basically a meet with one of our groups, the T-Riders Union, which is out of Alternatives for Community and the Environment, ACE. Everybody heard of ACE? Yeah. And so this is sort of an example. So I think what's really important here is that instead of responding to the MBTA and their fare increase, True, some OTM members, some other groups around the table, including Mass Senior Action, Neighbors to Neighborhood, we decided that we wanted to actually change the frame and change the narrative. And so what we came up with were five ideas to actually increase revenue into the MBTA. We saw this as an issue that the MBTA didn't have positive revenue. So we wanted to create these sort of revenues. And one of them, of course, was U-Pass Hero. And we, at that time in 2012, had speculated it would be about $60 million that this might bring in. I also want to mention that Kalita Smalls, that she's an outstanding person, if you get to know her. So she's a U-Pass woman. So this is straight from the T-Riders Union